Welcome to the course, Mothers, Fathers, and Eating Disorders, brought to you by allceus.com. The objective of this course is to help you develop an understanding of the benefits of or meanings behind symptoms that can assist us in helping eating disordered patients identify alternate solutions to dealing with life on life's terms. The anorexic family is perceived as stable, not conflictual, cohesive, and with no lack of nurturance. This is how it's perceived from the inside of the family. An outsider looking in, anorexic families show more rigidity in the family organizations, have less clear interpersonal boundaries, and tend to avoid open discussions of disagreements between parents and children. Anorexic families are consensus sensitive, which is a nice way of saying enmeshed. People need to all agree and get along, and everybody needs to be happy. The bulimic family, on the other hand, is viewed as conflicted, badly organized, not cohesive, and lacking in nurturance and caring. The bulimic family has stronger interpersonal boundaries than the anorexic family. That means the difference between me and you is more distinct. There's less avoidance of disagreement, downright conflictual sometimes, and there's less stable family organization. Boundaries are on roller skates, people are here, people are gone. Bulimic patients are seen as angrily submissive to rather hostile and neglectful parents. Now, these parents may not be hostile and neglectful intentionally toward them. They may be hostile toward the world. They may be engrossed in other issues. However, the lack of nurturance is still there. The most commonly observed feature in the families of eating disordered patients is the lack of adequate joint parental authority. People with eating disorders, and adolescents in general, but it's worse in people with eating disorders and addictions, learn to split parents. There's no joint parental authority. There is often one parent who wants to be liked more, who undermines the other parent. Parents have problems finding a balance between rational and flexible control of their child and age-appropriate autonomy to give to the child. So how much control, how much do we let Junior do? It's difficult finding this balance, oftentimes because parents have difficulty themselves figuring out what they can and can't handle. For bulimic patients, child-rearing practices were characterized by a lack of care by both parents, but especially by their mothers. There's little research on the impact of an eating disorder on a marriage. What does exist indicates that there's collusion, a lack of intimacy, communication deficiencies, conflict avoidance, and hidden power struggles. Not only between the parents, but when the eating disordered patient grows up, these are the same characteristics that she brings to her relationship. Some mothers find self-affirmation in relationships with their children, so they tenaciously hold on to them. These children feel responsible for their mother's happiness and concurrently drawn to establish independence. So they want to make mom happy, but they want to be independent, but mom's not happy if they're independent, so they don't know what the heck to do. Most mothers will acknowledge that they miss the connection and long for the affirmation received from their infants. As daughters grow, they long for the comfort, safety, and a sense of well-being known and ministered to that was inherent in the original mother-daughter bond. Grandparents and grandchildren get along notoriously well because they both have the same common enemy, the parents. Take a minute and think about how parents can be the enemy to both children and grandparents. By noting the example set by their mothers and grandmothers, women can see how they remain connected to their own mothers throughout adulthood. If the connection between mother and grandmother is unhealthy, then this teaches an unhealthy pattern. The common denominator underlying many cases of anorexia and bulimia is the amount of maternal over or under involvement that influences the child's ability to establish personal boundaries and regulate her own self. If mom is always telling you what you want to do, what you will do, and how you will and won't feel, then you, the child, never learn how to establish these on your own. As daughters grow, both parties must withstand the loss and growth in the separation. So what losses are we talking about? Empty nest, lack of the child needing the parent for survival as much, independence, changes in values, changes in belief systems. If the mother herself feels unworthy of love and acceptance, then she may fear the daughter will abandon her, which creates those situations that we were talking about before with the fear of abandonment and basically bullying into submission. Accepting that one aspect of an eating disorder involves unresolved snags in the separation individuation process helps us to help clients start looking for solutions. So how does child and parent separate? Where does dad fit into the separation individuation crisis? In some cases, dad was the most nurturing one, so there's more of a crisis in separation from him. There are Freudian explanations for why it might be stronger with the mother. It's important to look at your patient's particular background and upbringing and see what makes most sense. Much of this presentation is very psychoanalytic in nature. Therefore, bearing that in mind in how much of it you take in and use depending on your personal beliefs about separation, individuation, and needs of parents to children. Eating disorders may represent the developmental snags that temporarily, but not irreversibly, forced the individual off track. As Rogers would say, people are generally good and forward-moving. When they reach a snag or a bump in the road, they get off track. If you remove the snag, then they will, by their very nature, return to being forward-moving. To become a woman herself, the girl must establish herself as different from her mother. How can she do this, and how might this be thwarted by an over-involved parent? What about an under-involved parent? Currently, there's a show on TV called Dance Moms, and it's just one of many that highlights situations in which mothers are living vicariously through their children. Not to say that fathers don't too in other situations through sports and school and other accomplishments. It's important to look at the family as a unit and see if the parents are celebrating the child's accomplishments for what they are, or if the parents are trying to live vicariously and make up for something that they didn't accomplish through their child. The mother experiences her little girl from the very beginning as like me. As the child individuates, the relationship may become strained if the child is forced into a path of like me. Does the child want to be like mom? Most children, as they grow up, take things from their parents that they want to keep going. They want to be like their parents. And most children pick up things from their parents. They go, oh, I know I don't want to do that with my kids. In an eating disordered family, you're not allowed to have any say about not being like mom or dad. You are going to basically be a clone. Otherwise, that creates strife, conflict, and rejection. Available fathers and father substitutes support little girls' femininity by their male presence and affirmation of her desirability and acceptance of her differentness. A father can communicate to the child that she's acceptable. She's different than her mother, but she's acceptable. She's a beautiful human being. If mother's self-esteem is tied up in children needing them, they may subtly give daughters messages such as, you can grow, but only if you do it for me. A sensitive mother recognizes that her children are individuals with their own talents, potentials, and problems. Will naturally want to hold on to their love, but will encourage the development and individuation, and will enjoy her child's growth and accomplishments. A challenged mother may react with loneliness, bitterness, or depression if she's not happy with herself as a woman. She may become over or under-involved in her child's life. She may experience reductions in her self-esteem if she perceives her daughter does not want to be like her. And she may experience fears of abandonment if the child is perceived to need her less. Over-involved mothers may be attempting to reestablish a primary tie with her daughter as a way to allay her anxiety and depression about growing older. That is, mothers may want to allay their anxieties about growing older. Searching for affirmation found in gratifying relationships. This expectation sets up an impossible situation for both mother and daughter, because neither can meet all the adult needs of the other. The mother may castigate the daughter for her lack of attentiveness, as daughter launches a diatribe against burdensome, never satisfied mother. So you've got two people, one who wants to individuate, one who's afraid of abandonment. They're both kind of fighting to try to maintain some sort of a relationship, but also get their own needs met. Under-involved mothers may be attempting to reestablish themselves as youthful and desirable to allay their anxiety and depression on growing older. She may not want to see her child develop because that constitutes or communicates to her that she's getting older. Under-involved mothers may be searching for the affirmation found in gratifying relationships and may castigate the daughter for her neediness as a daughter, and the daughter will launch a diatribe against a mother who doesn't care what she does. Again, it's where the people are looking for love, and the fact that they're not finding themselves as inherently lovable, so they're trying to get someone else to fill that void. Having cake and eating it too. In anorexia, there's a theory that the child is resisting development of a womanly body to protect herself from experiencing herself as exactly like her mother. Very Freudian here. She may resist against a womanly body which inhibits her ability to be her own person, preventing unacceptable traits that the mother has, such as what she perceives to be fat thighs, big hips, etc. Often this is communicated by the mother in the relationship who's constantly talking about weight, size, shape, etc. Meanwhile, she sets up situations so caretakers must become attuned to her physical needs. So the anorexic creates situations in which she's the identified patient in order to get the nurturance she craves, yet she avoids becoming a woman in order to avoid becoming like mother. Both maternal over- and under-involvement can result in impairments in the child's ability to self-regulate. For the restrictor, or anorexic, self-starvation may be an adaptive effort to defend against self-regulatory deficits resulting from maternal over-involvement. Mom's always told you how to feel, how to think, what to eat, what to do. The child is defending against the fact that she never learned how to regulate herself, so she just doesn't eat at all. In contrast, the bulimic, chaotic eating behavior may reflect a desperate attempt to compensate for an empty experience resulting from maternal under-involvement. She fills herself with foods that are stimulating, that taste good, that remind her of good times, that are, quote, comfort foods, to compensate for the maternal under-involvement. But then the guilt and the desire to regain control are accomplished through purging. The fundamental difference between the restricting and bulimic mode could be thought of as the bulimic patient's search for something to take in compared to the anorexic patient's attempt to keep something out. Think of the relationship. The bulimic is trying to take in love, take in nurturance, take in something to fill this void because nobody gives a damn. The anorexic comes from an enmeshed family where everybody's telling her what to do, how to feel, what to think, what to eat. She's trying to push people out. In bulimia, patients yearn for more maternal emotional involvement and nurturance than they received. They felt lonely and found that mothers unavailable psychologically, if not physically. They frantically searched for a protective, available, ready response from their mothers. If a mother is repeatedly unavailable or unable to meet the needs of a child, that child will anxiously cling to the mother in the absence of the mother alternative figures. Without a firm foundation, the child becomes insecure, anxious, and looks for ways to self-soothe. Food not only represents the mother by its feeding function, but it also has the power to soothe. Eating thus becomes a reasonably consistent and available source of nurturance. Bulimics long for the kind of relationship that their friends seem to have with their mothers. Often, rather than risk being disappointed in other relationships, they cope with their loneliness by avoiding people and acting as if they don't care. Freud's principle of multideterminism asserts that a given behavior rarely has only one cause or meaning. It's not just biology, parenting, or society. In treatment, patients find that they can rework memories and feelings about their mothers to better understand why and how she did what she did, and attempt to form a more forgiving, if not loving, memory. A benign maternal presence can be cultivated by working on the relationship with one's mother in individual or family therapy. One may also search for suitable mother substitutes for clients, such as mentors or teachers. Within the family relationships, the father can be thought of as a benevolent disruption of the mother-child symbiosis. Dad is not a threat to the mother-daughter relationship, as would be an outsider. Dad has less investment in molding the daughter to be like him, allowing her more independence, room for autonomy, and self-exploration. For girls' healthy development, fathers must convey from their earliest interactions with her that she is beautiful and loved for who she is. The eating disordered patient's father is perceived as being absent from home, either emotionally or physically. Even if the father was physically present, his daughter might find herself having to enter his world rather than having him reach out to actively enter hers. As a different and separate person, the father helps to wean the child from the primary unity and dependency on the mother. The daughter turns to him for confirmation of herself and to enhance her needed sense of separateness from her mother. When her father is unable to help his daughter move out of the maternal orbit, the daughter may turn to food as a substitute. The very act of refusing or purging food cuts off a symbolic umbilical cord to the provider of food, the mother, and as such is an autonomous statement that they don't need you. In more healthy functioning households, the adults nurture each other so that there will be sufficient emotional resources available to nurture and nourish the family's dependent children. The parent without a partner may find their resources are sufficiently taxed and may even turn to the children themselves for solace and sustenance. Friends, parents, and therapists of persons with eating disorders frequently find themselves experiencing an odd mixture of emotions that they cannot readily explain. Through projective identification, we are experiencing the same feelings as that of the patient. This is an invaluable experience of empathy. It helps us understand what is really within the heart of the eating disordered client. It helps us help them identify their emotions and apply their menu of feelings. And it helps us model ways to appropriately cope with those feelings. So next time you're with an ED client and you're feeling frustrated and helpless, own it, but identify it, and then talk about it. How do the presence or absence of our fathers affect us? How do we find ourselves assimilating his ideals and values, often in ways that are not readily apparent? How do the presence or absence of our mothers affect us? How do we find ourselves assimilating her ideals and values in ways that are not readily apparent? Can one parent successfully fulfill the roles of both mother and father?